Welcome to Love Lattes, the podcast designed for women who are ready to stop settling and start living a life full of authentic love, confidence, and real connection. I'm your host, Victoria, the self-love scientist, speaker, and coach, and I'm here to help you reclaim your power, deepen your relationships, and fall unapologetically in love with yourself. So grab your tea, your latte, or your favorite beverage, and let's get started.
Anyone can have sex, but what about mind-blowing, deep, sensual, emotional intimacy? What separates couples who have this emotional connection from those who have become roommates over time? And is it possible for us to rebuild trust and connection after we've hurt each other, even unintentionally? Well, my loves, in today's episode, I am joined by Kameran a marriage coach who specializes in helping couples strengthen emotional intimacy, navigate conflict, and build relationships that stay connected through every challenge. And today we're exploring what healthy conflict looks like. We touch base on the sound relationship house and a theory that involves baseball. Welcome to Love Lattes, Kameran.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. I was so stoked to be on your podcast a couple weeks ago. And now, like, just before we hit record, when you said that, you're like, anyone can have sex. I was like, ah! Oh my God, this is deep. Okay, so to kind of kick things off, I feel like a lot of people are gonna be like, what's so important about emotional intimacy? So can you kind of tell us a little bit about that and how it feeds our relationships for the better?
Yeah. So to break this down, okay, so I used to be a kindergarten teacher. So I'm very like, let's start at the basics and work our way up. So you mentioned the sound relationship house in the intro. So just to go over that, just to explain, I am Gottman certified. And Gottman, Dr. John Gottman, if you're not familiar with him, he's like the love guru. Him and his wife have studied relationships for like the last 40 to 50 years. They are the most well-known researchers and therapists in the relationship space. So I have a certification from their institute. And what he talks about is the sound relationship house. A relationship has to have three basic things in order to thrive, not just survive, but thrive. So if you think about it like a house, the walls that are load bearing, that are going to keep your house up, are commitment, which I cannot teach you. You have to have that on your own. And then trust. Trust, which I know we're going to get into a little bit later, can be broken. And then that wall can actually be rebuilt. All right. So your house can lean. It just can't fall completely down because there's no commitment there. Those are the two things that keep your house up. But what fills the inside of the home, which includes that emotional intimacy, right, is friendship. The friendship is the difference between having a freestanding building that you're living in, that you pull into the driveway every day and you're like, for the love of God, and you have to just sit in the driveway and give yourself a 20-minute pep talk and even just walk in the door, versus pulling in the drive, throwing it in park, and being so excited to walk in and feeling that warmth, that excitement, that like, thank God I'm home kind of thing. That's where the emotional intimacy comes in. You have to have, that's where we play baseball. We actually play baseball inside the house. So, do you want me to just go ahead and jump right on into that?
First of all, like, yes, in just a sec, but oh my God, I love that. Oh my God. So you have commitment and then you have the other side,
trust,
and then the other side is the friendship.
Yep. And that's what's missing. So couples that come to me, I've helped hundreds of couples over the last 8 years. And I would say close to 95% of them, when you're dating, friendship is easy. You're doing things together. You're getting to know each other. You're having a good time. And then you throw full-time jobs and kids and all the things into the mix, and the dog even, and all of this mental load, and the friendship just slowly starts to fade and you don't even realize it. And so then 10 years down the road, maybe even 3 years down the road, that's when you're sitting in the driveway being like, I don't even want to go in the door. I don't even want to do this. But you don't know why. You can't put your finger on it. Something's missing. Something's not there. It's friendship.
Wow. I feel like I would have guessed like, I don't think it's commitment that could be a problem, but like the trust I feel like can sometimes tower a little bit. And like you said,
Sure.
it can fall, but then you can rebuild that. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yeah. As
Wow.
long as the bones of commitment are there,
Hmm.
you're good. You can rebuild the trust, you can rebuild the friendship. And I that's what I teach couples all day, every day. I
Mm,
can teach you no problem in less than a year how to rebuild trust and rebuild friendship. I cannot teach you commitment. That's you got to do that all on your own because
wow.
you're either in or you're out.
Yes.
Like the couples that come to me, they're like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I want to be married. Well, I can't help you then because you're going to be divorced in the next year. So
Right, because you're unsure.
you don't have commitment.
Mm, wow. That's such an
Yep.
interesting imagery. I love
Yeah.
that, honestly.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's definitely, I would love for us to dive a little bit deeper into, you said, was it the baseball that is connected to the trust or was it connected to the friendship?
Kind of both, but mostly friendship. Yeah. But here's the thing. So they kind of go hand in hand. So when you have a friend, right? The reason that they're like your best friend is because you trust them, right? So if something happens, there's a conflict, you had a bad day, whatever, they're the first person that you want to go to. They're the first person that you want to talk to. They are they're with you. They have commitment to your friendship. They have your trust. All of that, right? There's a warmth there. You speak to them a certain way. You wouldn't speak to them a certain way. You respect them. You don't disrespect them. You consider them before you do certain things or say certain things, or like if you know that your best friend has a peanut allergy, you're not obviously going to eat Reese's Pieces on the way over to their house and then go in and like start talking near them or touch their hands or whatever. You're going to consider those kinds of things. But those pieces of the friendship are we start to take our relationship for granted, especially romantic relationships. We start to take advantage of this person and think they're always going to be there. They're not going to leave. And so we stop treating them with that friendship, with that consideration, with the same level of respect and with the same level of care that we would our best friend. And then the friendship leaves and we wonder why our home feels so cold and empty.
Heavy on the respect. Oh my God. That is such a
Yep.
good point though, because the foundation of friendship, and I have a podcast I did a couple months ago actually on this couple who've been married for many years, and they said friendship is the basis of your
Yeah,
relationship. And I think
it
that's
is.
an excellent point. It's like when people get comfortable, like you said,
Hmm.
they're like, oh, like they're not going to go anywhere. And it's like, well, the behaviors, the communication starting to shake, the trust isn't working, and it can't just be that one person who's committed to making this repair. It has to be both.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
that's amazing. So, how does this all kind of flow into your baseball theory?
Yeah. So I have two boys. So there's constantly balls flying in our house. So I came up with this theory at one point that we have to play baseball. So playing baseball in the house looks like this. So your partner is going to be the pitcher. And when they come to you and they tell you anything, it could be, hey, I need gas in my car. It could be, hey, our son all of a sudden has an aversion to macaroni and cheese. It could be, man, I'm just really having a hard day today. It could be anything. I got a promotion, whatever the case may be. Whenever they tell you something, they're pitching you the ball. All right. Now, you as the batter, you have a job. Your job, obviously, if you're playing baseball, you want to get around all four bases. But the only way to do this, and this is where that friendship comes in, the only way to do this is you have to actually hit the ball. So if they're talking to you and you're like, okay, and like you're giving them that disrespect, you're not engaging with what they're telling you, you're not acknowledging that they're even in the room at the same time you are, things like that. You would be amazed at the number of couples that I work with that are like, I can be sitting in the same room, and when they walk into the room, they don't even acknowledge that I'm there. It's shocking to me, but that's batting. That's the only way you're going to be able to hit the ball. Now, the only way to run the bases when you get to first base, it's emotional safety. Are you an emotionally safe person? Can your person, your partner, the one who pitched you the ball, come to you and tell you anything without fear of judgment, without fear of being dismissed, without fear of being minimized, without fear of you trying to fix the problem, man or woman, typically a man, but man or woman can do this. So are you just trying to fix it and like, okay, now run along, you have the solution?
Right.
Or are you hearing them? Are you hearing not just their words, but the message underneath? When they come to you and say, hey, I'm really struggling in this area, do you hear, oh, you're a failure? Or do you, like, meaning yourself? Or do you hear, oh, my partner needs my help. They need me to step up. They need X, Y, and Z because whatever's happening for them isn't working. Right? So are you an emotionally safe space? Do you get defensive? If you do, you're not an emotionally safe space. So therefore, you strike out at first base and you have to go back to the dugout and you have to wait for them to pitch you the ball again. The problem is, okay, the more you strike out, the more you have to go back to the dugout and wait for them to pitch, the longer and longer and longer it is between pitches. Because now you're teaching them you're not an emotionally safe space. You're never going to get off first base. Now, here's where this comes in, okay? Say you've completely mastered emotional safety. Your person can come to you about anything. Here's where connection comes in. Second base is connection. Typically, men connect through activities, shoulder to shoulder activities. So like you'll see like the 80-year-old men that are working on the lawnmower and their wife is like, sitting on the front porch, sipping sweet tea or knitting or something like that. It's because they come out and they're like, well, you want to, my dad's a perfect example. He's 67, works on a farm. My mom still works with him and he'll go, well, you want to ride down to the lake with me to check the motor? Sure. Like it's a 14-mile drive down and a 14-mile drive back, but like, let's go. You know what I mean? Like that's connection to men. For women, it's open-ended conversation. And here's where we go wrong. Men think, and I actually know this because my husband told me this at one point. I said, you don't ask me open-ended conversations like you did when we were dating. And he goes, yeah, because I asked those questions when we were dating. Yeah. And we've been together 11 years, bro. Like I'm not the same person I was at that point. We've got 2 kids and moved 5 times. You've changed careers. I've changed careers. Like I'm not the same person that I was. So that connection, those open-ended conversations have to be had over and over and over. Do you still like mint chocolate chip ice cream? Is your biggest fear still abandonment? Is your biggest fear still something happening to our kids? Like, do you have a different fear? Maybe it's your parents aging now or something. Like, what goals do you have? Hopefully your goals are changing, once every year or so versus every 10 years. So these open-ended conversations are really important. That's connection. So you connect in 2 different ways. A story that I like to tell, I was working with a couple not too long ago, and they're talking about this date weekend that they had. They went to a baseball game, oddly enough, and they leave the game, and the husband's like, he's like on cloud 9. And he's like, it was really great, right? That was like really great. And she goes, I didn't really get anything out of it. And he was so hurt over that. He was like, what? I planned this great weekend. We went to this we were together all day. And she goes, yeah. And you didn't ask me one thing. We didn't really even communicate the entire day. So it's easy for one person to get something out of it where the other person doesn't. So that's connection. Okay. You have to understand how your partner connects and then actually intentionally put time into that. Okay. Then once you've mastered emotional safety and connection, that's where you move to third base. And third base is pretty tricky because it's emotional intimacy. Now, your attachment style plays into this. And if you are typically avoidant, you are going to avoid emotional intimacy because it feels scary for you. It is very threatening. You want closeness, but when you get that closeness, you get that emotional intimacy, it feels encompassing and you feel engulfed, which is one of your biggest core wounds, biggest core fears as an avoidant. Okay. But as a woman, okay, because typically 75% of women are anxious, preoccupied versus being dismissive avoidant. So what happens is we want physical intimacy and we wonder why that's not happening. It's because you're missing that third base. You're missing that emotional intimacy. Does my partner know that I have their back no matter what? Now, how this plays into the sound relationship house is we talked about trust, right? Trust is the bare minimum of emotional intimacy. You cannot have emotional intimacy if you cannot trust your partner. If you are constantly wondering, are they lying? Are they cheating? If I, started choking or having a seizure on the floor, would my partner actually know to call 911? Or would they just be like, you're fine. It's not a big deal. Let's go. Like that kind of thing. So are they there? Are they with you? If you threaten divorce every time you argue, or if you threaten to leave or if you do leave the house every time you argue or have conflict, you don't have emotional intimacy. So having that secure attachment is really important because then you want to be able to run home. Well, home plate, just like it was in high school, is physical intimacy. But that's different than sex because just as we talked about before we started recording, anybody can have sex. People have one night stands all the time in every city in the world. It doesn't matter, right? But it's just sex.
Yeah.
And when you get up the next morning to do the walk of shame and you're walking home and you're like, why do I still feel unfulfilled? It's because your body is looking for that emotional intimacy, but you don't find it with a random stranger. You build it with somebody that you have emotional safety, connection, and emotional intimacy with. On the flip side to that, for women, this is just like the connection is different for men and women. Physical intimacy is different for men and women. Again, we can open our legs as women and we can enjoy that pleasure if it's there for a short period of time, right? But for emotional intimacy, we have to have that first in order to have great physical intimacy. For us to truly get out of our head and really be in the moment with you and connected and that fireworks of like, holy crap, this was the best sex of my life. That is emotional intimacy right there. Men get that through physical intimacy, but women have to have it before they actually open up and receive you as a man. You see what I'm saying? So that's what's missing in a lot of marriages, in a lot of relationships. And that's what I help with.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I've been thinking a lot about patterns lately, especially the ones that show up in our relationships. For a long time, mine looked like overgiving, people pleasing, and convincing myself that if I shrink myself down just a little bit smaller, I would be enough. But knowing a pattern and actually breaking it are two very different things. And trying to untangle that alone can feel overwhelming. That's where therapy can help. Having outside support can help you recognize your patterns without judgment and make choices that actually support you. And that's why I'm grateful for today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp makes therapy more accessible by connecting you with a licensed therapist online so you can get the right support in a way that fits your life and your schedule. Love and Latte listeners can get 10% off their first month of therapy by going to betterhelp.com/love and lattes or by clicking the link in today's episode description. Breaking cycles isn't about fixing yourself. It's about learning to love yourself differently. Wow. Oh my God. This has been phenomenal, Cameron. I'm loving everything. And I feel like these are things that a lot of couples don't know. Or even like if you're out in the dating world and you're like looking to, this is some really great things to keep in mind when you're navigating, because again, we all want to feel, seen and connected, but you can't keep, like you said, throwing the ball and striking out, thinking it's going to make a difference. Um,
Yeah.
and as you're explaining this, I'm curious, let's say you've had those bases, but then you hit
Mm-hmm.
conflict. And now,
Mm-hmm.
how would you recommend couples navigating repair and conflict and going through these bases? Because like you said, the first one was emotional safety. Well, if there's a
Yeah.
conflict and that's been disrupted, how can you go about repairing that? I think it's easy to be like, oh, let's have sex and make up sex, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that
And
can
people
be
do that all the
so,
time.
and it's so unfulfilling because you still feel like shit. So now you have to
Yeah.
step back because you're like, how do I get that emotional safety back? And how do I get to emotional intimacy? What is your recommendation for that?
Well, you actually hit the nail on the head. So it's in the repair. The problem is that, okay, using the baseball analogy, okay, there's a difference between playing t-ball and playing in the major leagues, right? When you are playing t-ball, you're barely learning the fundamentals of the game. But when you get to the major leagues, that's marriage. And the problem is that we all go through life because it's like, especially American society of like, go through school, get a job, get married, have kids, like, you know what I mean? Like there's a lineage that you have to follow, right? The problem with that is nobody is really qualified to be in a relationship
Mm,
because what we're watching at home, maybe you never learned to repair. Perfect example, I worked with a couple not too long ago where he grew up where his parents had conflict all the time and it was extremely toxic. She never saw conflict at all because her parents would go to the bedroom and shut the door and they would like whisper fight. So the kids never actually heard the conflict. So
mhm.
when they get married, he's like, yeah, let's hash this out. And she's like, oh my God, are you serious? Like, no, we can't hash this out, especially in front of the kids. Here's the problem. At T-ball age, we learn, so like 4 or 5 years old, we learn in preschool, say sorry to your friend and then go play. So you learn, okay, sorry. And then you walk off. Never again in your entire growing up do you ever learn how to apologize and repair well again. Nobody ever teaches you. So
Mm,
then you get into marriage and you're like, I can play in the majors. I got this. I'm qualified. I'm good. And you're really not because you don't know how to repair. And repair is the one thing that is missing out of most relationships because you say sorry and you move on, or you don't say sorry at all. You sweep it under the rug just like your parents did, and you don't ever speak again about it. And then there's this wall of resentment that is built with no window, no door, and no access to your partner. So what we have to do is a 5 finger apology every single time. Anytime there's conflict, both parties have a part to play in it. Now, your part may only be 1%, but you still have to own your part. I'm sorry I rolled my eyes. I'm sorry I didn't come to you sooner. I'm sorry that I let my resentment build. I'm sorry I used that tone. I'm sorry, whatever the case may be, you have to own your part. That takes a lot of self awareness, but it also takes a lot of humility and vulnerability. And that's the part of friendship that we're missing. If we don't have the emotional safety to begin with, if we don't have the connection to begin with, we're not willing to be vulnerable because why would you be vulnerable with somebody who's going to minimize you or dismiss you or throw you under the bus?
mm,
Right? So we both have to put down our pride. We have to meet in the middle of the field and we both have to say, I'm sorry for, and then name what you did. I know it impacted you in this way. In the future, here's what I'm going to do to change it. And will you forgive me? Those 5 things have to be in every single apology. And people think this is going to be like a whole, well, I don't want to take the time to apologize for a whole paragraph. It doesn't have to be. It's
Yeah.
like three sentences. I'm sorry that I'm late and I didn't send a text. I know that you waited dinner on me and now it's cold. I am so sorry you put that time and effort in. In the future, I promise I'm going to set a timer and I'm going to send a quick text before I come home. Will you forgive me? Like
Mm,
9 seconds. That's all it takes. Well,
wow.
we don't learn how to do that.
No. No, that's so huge. And I think, oh my God, Cameron, you're dropping some gold stuff. Like, damn. No,
So my whole goal is for
yeah.
people to actually have happier, healthier marriages that don't seem so impossible.
No, but you've made some really excellent points. And like, for those who are listening, definitely think about like it does take a lot of self-awareness to recognize, hey, I do play a part because that's the whole point of a relationship is you have a part. Like you
Yeah.
still played a role in this, even if it wasn't intentional. And you can use Cameron's approach for your 5-part apology and execute this plan to get back to recreate that emotional safety. Like at the very beginning, we talked about, can your partner be safe? And then when you do that connection, it's not just I'm listening, it's more like, are you actively seeing everything that they're saying and you're wanting to move through with a solution? So, Cameron, this has been such a fantastic episode. I am like, oozing and I cannot wait to to share this with everybody. Do you have, I know we have to wrap up, and do you have any lasting remarks or even um any more gold nuggets for people who are navigating love, relationships, or repair before we wrap up today's episode?
The only thing I would say is that you can make a relationship work with anyone who you want to make a relationship work with. Like you could go outside and throw a rock, and if both of you are willing to put the time, energy, and effort into the relationship and into growing yourself, marriage and relationships were not meant to make you happy. They were meant to help you grow, to be a mirror to you to see what you need to grow and what you need to fix in yourself, and that's the whole point. And so for that, as long as you're both willing to make it work, I mean, there's nothing at this point that surprises me. I have worked with people that were hours away from signing a divorce paper, like the final divorce decree, and they have incredible marriages even still today. So I would say that if you want to make it work, there is a way, but you have to be committed. You have to have that commitment, and everything else can be taught. And not to have shame around getting that help, because if you're wanting to learn a new language, you have to get help with that. You can't just sit down and open a book and be like, okay, I'm going to learn it today. There's ways of speaking, there's tones, there's, different formulations of putting the words together that will help you. And that's what I teach. And so don't be, don't feel ashamed for getting help learning this new language, because it's most likely not a language that you learned growing up.
Amazing. Cameron, thank you so much for sharing your amazing insight and your tools and just this huge perspective and a close-up of how we can make these relationships repair, heal, how we can be more committed, and honestly, having that foundation of friendship. And everyone else, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Love and Lattes. I will drop more information about Cameron in the show notes, and we will see you in the next episode.